DTFF.
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Welcome back to DTFF, everyone. Happy Tuesday evening if you're joining us live. We are back. It was another excellent week of football. We've got a great episode coming on tonight. But before we get into just all that, my co-host with the most, Jake, how are you doing this evening, sir?
Fantastic. Football was all that and a bag of chips. People still say that. I know that. If not, I'm bringing it back. It was a great weekend of just kind of disasters, but really fun disasters to watch. There was a lot of late game implosions. Some of them, we maybe saw coming, and some of them surprised us a little bit, but it kept us on our toes for what was ultimately kind of a rough fantasy week. I think overall, some disappointments abound in week 3, man.
There were disappointments, and you kind of alluded to our episode we're going to be talking about this evening here, which I'll get to in a second. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. Sure.
I assume you're always fantastic.
I'm doing fine. I had some computer issues over the weekend where my laptop died, but my wife is nice enough to let me use hers. And I just went in to go into Twitter to just promote the show. And as you log into Twitter from a new device, it was on light mode instead of dark mode. And it just threw me for a fucking loop. It was the worst experience for my eyes ever.
How are your retinas? They holding up? You
Oh,
gonna be okay?
Barely. God. Technology. Come on, man. But anyway, we've got a great show. This is kind of part 2 of what we started talking about last week. Where this is kind of a real mirage. Only, Jake, I like your episode this week, the title. So last week we talked about the high flyers that were doing really well. Did we think it was going to continue or not? This week we're looking at the opposite, where players, they're people too, I guess.
They're people, yeah.
Where they're underperforming what we would have expected based on their draft capital going into the season. And you titled this episode, which I love, Rough Spurt or Season Long Hurt. That is terrific.
An important question. Thank you. It's an important question. I think we've all had some rough spurts. You know what I'm saying? But hopefully the hurt does not last for too long. But we'll have to see. We'll figure that out.
Yes, we will definitely see. But before we do that, we've got our normal house cleaning things here. So first, Jake, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, the first thing that I'm drinking this evening is from Griffin Claw Brewery. This is another one of those up north expedition Michigan haulbacks that I got from our time up on the peninsula up there.
Was it a knockoff Hogwarts? Griffin Claw,
no,
one of the houses?
But I will say you probably will not be able to see this logo. It's very small.
Part of a pumpkin?
It does kind of look, but look at the logo right above it. YouTube viewers, it does look very Harry Potter-esque. I'm sure that there's some copyright infringement coming down on them soon, but I got the beer before they had to deal with that. But it is a pumpkin spice beer. Dustin, I know that's not your jam, so You're certainly not imbibing on this, but you know what? I'm a basic fall bitch today, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Hey, you do you, man. You do you.
I will. What are you putting down your gullet today?
I've got here just one of my home brews. This is my Ballast Point Sculpin IPA clone that I've been trying to get the keg emptied so I can brew up another beer here. So that's what I'm enjoying, and it is delicious, as we were drinking a bunch this weekend watching football.
We sure were. I had that one this weekend. It's a delight. I like all those Sculpin ones, whether they come with extra flavor or not. I'm a big fan of it.
Yep.
But that's, as you alluded to, not the only thing that I'm drinking this week, unfortunately, Dustin. I want to get this done ahead of the drunk trade, honestly. Okay. I know we typically invert this, but let me get it out of the way. It's our beer bet payoff. So do you want to do the honors of recapping what happened last week?
I sure as Abraham will. So our beer bet, to recap, was the Jacksonville wide receivers, which I took, versus the LA Chargers wide receivers, which Jake took. They were head-to-head matchup. This was straight wide receiving core PPR points. Jacksonville with an explosion on offense that, unlike anything we've seen from them in recent memory, wide receivers had 59.7 total points, and the Chargers had a lowly 38.4.
I mean, my goodness. My goodness. Now, Keenan Allen, of course, a non-factor in this one.
Mhm.
Mike Williams, also a non-factor, but he was actually out there like playing. But they just did not come with it in this game. Jacksonville did, which actually does make my heart kind of happy. We
Mhm.
talked about them as our rising offense all offseason, so it is nice to see that fruit being born here, even if Travis Etienne, who we'll talk about a little later, was not a part of it. It's great to see the quarterback and wide receivers coming on. So because of that, I'm happy to throw back some Trader Joe's Kentucky bourbon here for
Ooh.
you tonight.
What is?
Dustin,
Do you know what that brand is? Like what the? I mean, I know it's Trader Joe's, but like, what's the real brand? Or no idea.
I don't know. It's Trader Joe's, man. I'm sure they're all distill it in the same place, right? Like, is this? I think Costco's is the Jameson, and so I don't know what this would be, but I don't know. It's Trader Joe's, man. That's all I need to know. But in any case, Dustin, you are an amazing fantasy football prognosticator / genius. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you for that.
You know what? That's some good bourbon. Trader Joe's or whoever made it for Trader Joe's. That was delightful. But I don't want to dwell on that now. I want to move right along to our favorite segment. It is, of course, our drunk trade of the week.
Let's hit it.
Drunk, hammer, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
All right, Dustin, this one, surprise, surprise, comes to us from Reddit from Swoody11. What up, Swoody?
Swoody.
They sent away Travis Fulgham, remember him, for a second rounder when he was on a tear with Philadelphia 2 years ago. As a refresher, this was like a 4 or 5 game little clip where he basically was a wide receiver 2-ish kind of guy for fantasy, right around there. Anyways, they say, I didn't even realize I'd sent the offer until noon the next day, which is fine. I thought it would be a mid to late second, and Fulgham seemed like a legit dude. Went so far as to text the owner, who's also a Philly fan, and tell him I had traded under the influence. He was pumped about it, thought he had just finessed me for Philly's future wide receiver 1. But that second rounder ended up being the 201 in the following draft, which was Devonta Smith. The Fulgham manager was pissed after the draft. Dustin, I bet that's true. I would be.
I would be as well.
You'd gotten this mystery box of the top tier receiver on Philly, which was not hard to do at that time. It was like the ghost of Alshon Jeffrey and not much else hanging out there. So I think this happens. This is what I want to talk about, Dustin. Obviously, we know what happened with this trade. We knew who won it as soon as I stopped reading it. But have you ever traded away for one of these, let's call them a mirage, a throwback to last week's episode? Have you traded for one of these mirage players where, oh man, they had a few games of awesome production, let's snatch them up?
I did. I traded for Mike Williams early last season, especially going into the season, how the coach was like, oh no, he's going to be our Michael Thomas player here. And I was like, oh, he's getting all the targets. And he did for the first like 5 weeks of the season, and then got injured, as Mike Williams likes to do, and just never was the same for the rest of the season and really dropped off. Thankfully, I remedied that situation and traded him away this offseason.
Now, that's an interesting case because Mike Williams, we just talked about him for our beer bet, of course, being a non-factor, but I don't think everybody is ready to call it quits on him entirely. In Mike Williams' case, he's still, for some, he is still TBD.
Right. And I'll just say on this particular team, that was his second run with my team. I had traded him away when I took over the team as an orphan. It was right after his rookie season. I traded him away and then brought him back last year, which worked for 5 weeks, and then got rid of him. I realized my mistake after he got injured again. I'm like, oh, I'm out. Can't fool me once. Shame on me. Fool me twice. You're not going to fool me again.
Can't get fooled again. That is fascinating, though. I cannot offhand think of a player that I have had on my team, traded away, and then traded back for. It's like, for me, when they're off my team, you are dead to me. We are done. We are through. The lone exception might be Robbie Anderson. For all of you student listeners who've been with us for a while, he probably has made, but that's more of like I grabbed him off waivers kind of deal, not like I traded for him, because I've definitely done that where you drop a guy to waivers and you pick him up a little bit later.
Hey, I am more than willing to be water, and if I see a guy that has a path to production, I will take that chance to bring him back.
I love it.
You can always trade him away again, just like I did. It doesn't matter.
That's true. And to bring it back to this trade, look, Swoody, I think we've all been there. You see somebody, especially highlight real worthy performances to some extent, which Fulgham looked really good. He did.
Oh,
Travis
that was
Fulgham
an amazing,
like
4 or 5 games there at the end of the season that he had. That was, I mean, it really was impressive.
So, look, I can't fault you too hard for doing something like that. And I think we've all been there at one point or another, because the other fear is, what if I wait too long to get a guy like that and then they explode and then they're crazy? You know, we've been down that road with running backs. Alvin Kamara is probably a great example. James Robinson, a great example. My question for you, Dustin, before we move off of this, Romeo Doubs for the Packers is starting to have this Travis Fulgham-esque ascent here. Give him another couple of games of production, and he might find his way into a drunk trade. That's on a future episode.
Absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean, he had a great week this last week. Let's hope it continues. Not just for fantasy, but obviously for our own homerism here and our hometown team. I do just want to say just one last thing here. How did Devonta Smith fall to the 201 in their rookie draft? That seems criminal. That seems criminal. And the fact that you got him there is, oh my God, just chef's kiss.
Even assuming super flex, tight end premium, all that stuff. A little crazy. So it worked out. This is a braggart drunk trade, and that's okay. We like to highlight those.
That's right. Yeah, we need to have those every once in a blue moon. All right, let's get on to our main event here. Let's wallow in the depths of sadness and let our listeners know if these players are going to rise out of the depths like a phoenix and become a beautiful bird, just carrying your team to glory, or is this where they're going to stay in the depths of hell, never to return? All right.
Wow. You really framed that in such a positive and redemptive light, Dustin.
So I want to start with someone that is near and dear to my heart, and that's Deebo Samuel. He was my drinking buddy last year. Currently wide receiver 31. Now, this offense we've seen, week 1 was the Flood Bowl, where they were basically in the bathtub the whole time, playing in that water. So you kind of have to throw that game out. And in a small sample size, like 3 games of what we got here, that hurts his overall production and what he looks like for the year. He has flashed at times, although I will say going into the season, I did expect some regression from this wide receiver 3 finish he had last year. I still expect him to be, top 10, top 12, but to be wide receiver 31, I will say I did not expect that. So we got Jimmy G back in the fold, though. Trey Lance was out. I feel like they were trying to figure out the offense with Trey Lance there. Now that they got Jimmy G there, I do expect things to turn around and get back to the offense that they were running last season. So I do expect this season to turn around. Will he be that top 3 wide receiver that, we saw last year? No. Will he return the value? I think he was probably like wide receiver 6 or 7 in ADP, right around there, if my memory serves me correct. Do I expect that? Probably not. I'll be honest, but he should be top 12 for sure.
See, you say for sure, and I'm not sold. I mean, I was lower on Debo than you were even coming into this season. Of course, this is not a victory lap because it could very easily turn around, like you said, with Jimmy Garoppolo in there. And to be fair, look, Jimmy's first full start, Debo has his season high. I know it's only 3 games, but season high in targets with 8, right? Season high in receiving yards by quite a bit. He's still getting some rushing work as kind of a safe floor, I suppose. But I said I was kind of shifting my gears a little bit more towards Brandon Ayuk coming into the season. Most of that was just because of his cheapness in your drafts. You could get him much, much later. I'm talking 5-6 rounds later than Debo coming into the drafts. Now, that was still assuming Trey Lance was there. But even towards the tail end of last season with Jimmy, the last 8 or 9 games of Brandon Ayuk, he was coming on really strong. Kind of looked like his rookie year again. And he's not going away. He's had 8 targets in the last 2 games. George Kittle coming back is what concerns me. He's been kind of out here. If Kittle comes back in, all 3 of these guys we know cannot feast with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. So I'm a little bit nervous and hesitant to say top 12 for sure. I think better things are ahead by default for Debo, but I'm like, hey, if I have my team as a wide receiver 2, cool. I'm good with that.
But that's not where you drafted him.
No, it's not. But hopefully you've had one of these other guys, these standouts, maybe a Christian Kirk kind of guy who surprised you later in your drafts, who can maybe take over that role and then feel like, yeah, Debo will still be consistent, I think, week to week as a solid guy. I just don't expect the same upside as last year.
Yeah, and he's only scored 1 touchdown so far, and that was a rushing touchdown. So I do expect that to come up a little bit too. Again, we got to kind of throw week 1 out of the water to throw a pun there. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. Maybe different outcomes come end of the season, but we do expect him to finish higher than wide receiver 31 come end of the season.
Same page, just a little bit different ink that we're using on it. You know what I mean? Let's keep it going for the week 1 throwback of the Flood Bowl game, because I do want to talk about Darnell Mooney. I mean, I don't, but I feel like we should talk about Darnell Mooney. If you have him rostered anywhere, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Even if you don't, you probably, shit you not, 114. He's averaged 2 fantasy points per game in his first 3. And throw out week 1. That's fine. We can play that game. Let's throw out week 1. Throw out that Rain Bowl. Darnell Mooney still in the last 2 games, throwing that one out, has 19 yards in the last 2 games. 19 yards. He has 3 receptions. It is abysmal. It is to the point, and Dustin, I went against my own instincts in our home league this year to draft him. I just figured I'm an idiot most of the time. Let me draft against myself, and hopefully good things will happen. And in this particular case, it did not. And I cannot wait to drop him off of my team. I'm not even going to do it as an ad drop tomorrow, in fact, because our waivers run a little later than everybody else. I'm going to drop him independently. I'm not going to.
You're just going to
wait.
You're tilt dropping here, basically.
Because, and here's why. So obviously I'm giving away the goose here because we all know my expectation that going forward is, yeah, it'll be better. Okay. That doesn't mean anything because everything is pretty much better than wide receiver. 114. Darnell Mooney, Justin Fields. You go ahead, Dustin. Before I go into my shit.
I say you probably have at least 50 other wide receivers you could pick that are doing better than him so far in the season. So,
and the thing is, how long do we give a quarterback and his number one, quote unquote, receiver to gel before we abandon ship? Well, when it looks like this for the Bears, this is where I start to get real frightened, because currently on the Bears, we were, I'll throw his name up right now because I want to bunch these two together. Cole Kmet, tight end on the Bears as well. He is currently, let me just quick double check. He is tight end 53, right? So Cole Kmet in a very similar boat here. The deal with Cole Kmet is you did not have to draft him early. He was kind of a streamer guy anyways for tight end. You can drop him, no worries. That's all good. With Darnell Mooney, you drafted him somewhat reasonably high, 5th, 6th round. So you probably want to keep him. Here's the deal. The target share he's had, meaning he's had 11 total targets, which somehow leads this offense through 3 weeks. 11 targets through 3 weeks leads the Bears offense. Now, Equanimeous St. Brown has actually been incredibly efficient. Shout out to a former Packer and brother of the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has 77 yards. The second guy on that list is Dante Pettis with 51 yards. The third guy on that list is Cole Kmet with 40 yards. All of them came last week. David Montgomery, 4th on the list with 38 yards. Byron
who was
Pringle,
injured
5th
last
on
week
the list with 33 yards. Byron
who's on IR.
motherfucking Pringle has more yards, and you're right, is on IR currently, than Darnell Mooney. And yes, it'll get better. Am I going to be patient enough to wait for whatever that looks like? Fuck no. Because his ceiling to me right now with this offense through 3 weeks is a somewhat usable flex depending on the matchup. It's not a guy I'm holding on to. That's not worth holding on to.
No, I agree 100%. And let's just round out this whole Bears conversation and talk about Justin Fields too. Let's just get it all out there. Basically, no one on this team is startable or worth keeping at this point. Just drop him. Justin Fields is the same. He's looked abysmal, obviously, with his wide receiving core putting up those numbers. It's just not worth holding on to him at this point. Obviously, if you're in like a super flex league, quarterbacks are high currency, so maybe you don't want to drop them. But if you're in a one quarterback league, just drop them. There's got to be better quarterbacks out there that you can pick up and stream at this point.
Agreed. It's the same exact basket, and maybe he gets together. The one thing with Justin Fields is like, I know that his rushing floor hypothetically can turn things around, even if his ancillary people don't get turned around. If Cole Kmet doesn't turn it around, if Darnell Mooney doesn't turn it around, that's fine, because maybe Justin Fields can still salvage some usable fantasy weeks, maybe like half the remaining weeks. But you're right, man. In one quarterback leagues, I'm not dealing with it. I think, again, better days are ahead for Justin Fields. So in Dynasty, I would still look at Justin Fields as a trade candidate, meaning I will trade for him at what is hopefully a bottom level price. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. I mean, I'm talking in super flex leagues. I'm floating out there to see if for 2 second-round picks I can get Justin Fields. And would you think that that's enough to get him right now?
It might be. It might be. Although with how this 23 class is looking, people might want to stick to that first, just to try to get one of those incoming quarterbacks from that first round.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair with how he's looked so far through a season in 3 games.
Yeah. Unless they're an outright Bears homer, I think that they will probably be okay with that. And just thinking like, what if he goes the Josh Rosen route and he's done after this year? And I've seen people posit that out on the Twitter sphere, so it's not unreasonable. But Dustin, I want to keep this on the quarterback train real quick, and I want to hit these two guys back to back.
Okay.
Because they're pretty much back to back in production and in finishes right now. It's Aaron Rodgers at quarterback 26, and it's Tom Brady at quarterback 28. Both old dudes who just played each other this past week. A frustrating game to watch, I think, for all parties, not even just Packer fans. I think for fantasy enthusiasts, Packer fans, Bucs fans, everybody, it was a little bit rough to watch. So these two guys, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Obviously, with Brady, we've been thinking forever that it would end. I was tired of betting against Tom Brady, and we talked about this a lot, Dustin. I was tired of it, so I was fine with drafting him. He's been missing a lot of pieces. I get it. Mike Evans has been there for the first 2 games. Julio Jones has been there in some extent. He's had Russell Gage. He doesn't have a real tight end. Sorry, Kyle Rudolph. I know that sounded rude, but for fantasy at least, doesn't have a real tight end. Are we witnessing the actual decline finally, where Brady hit the cliff? He's done. He's droppable in all formats, or at least tradable in Dynasty for a cheap pick.
I think in Dynasty, yes, you try to trade him. In redraft, no, I would still hold on to him. And both these offenses or both the teams in general, have a lot of similarities where aging quarterback, very strong defense, solid running game, no wide receivers, basically. So
for now, at least.
Yeah. So with Brady,
Brady,
Mike Evans was suspended last week. So if Mike Evans was in the game last week, I think we would have seen a different offense. I mean, we saw Russell Gage tear up the Packers defense for whatever reason, with a bum ankle, apparently. So Mike Evans will be coming back this next week. That changes the whole dynamics of that offense. Chris Godwin should be coming back soon as well from his ACL. Julio, I'm expecting him to come back, maybe not this next week, but the following week with his hamstring. So, I mean, you get your stud wide receivers back on that offense, it should start clicking, and you should see better days ahead from TB12 there. Now, with the Packers, we kind of thought, or at least we did, as people that closely keeping the thumb on the pulse, to say, for the Packers here.
I thought you were going to say thumb up our butts when it comes to the Packers, which
that
for
too.
me is equally astute and accurate.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
We knew going into this season that it was going to be, this offense was going to look different than it traditionally has because Davante Adams left. Now, we saw some good things this week with Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson's has been injured. Randall Cobb's been, flirting and looking good at times. He's caught some big balls. Robert Tonyan's starting to get more involved weekly here as he's recovering from his ACL. The Packers O-line is improving, getting back guys off of that were on IR and injured last year. So I do think that this offense will improve as well. But if I had to pick one of the 2 quarterbacks that I'd plant my flag with for the rest of the season, it's going to be Tom Brady. I see that offense performing much better than what the Packers offense. I think the Packers offense is going to be great in fits, and you just have to find the week that they're going to hit. And I just don't want to play that game.
And you really have to be very clever about the matchup plays. I think you're right for Aaron Rodgers, because if the defense that he's going against, and you go, well, it's a soft defense, it should be an easy, roll him over game. He's still probably not going to see a lot of work, and it's going to fall on Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon and those things. It's like, maybe, okay, if there is a shootout potential involved, fine. I guess you can stream him in redraft leagues or hold in Dynasty for that purpose alone. I'm absolutely with you that Tom Brady is the better one for the rest of this season. I still don't think either of these guys are ones that I want to hold on my 1 quarterback redraft rosters. I'd rather be looking to drop and stream and play some of these guys that have come. There's no doubt about it. I would rather start Cooper Rush if he plays next week than Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. That's where I'm at with both of these guys. I'm so
that's
beyond
a bold statement.
Them. It's really, it has not been through these first couple of weeks. And obviously, I'm not saying Cooper Rush is this amazing real life quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, he's in a much better offense right now for fantasy. And it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
You
So
wouldn't have
I'm
known
not
from
playing
last
that
night's
game.
game.
Well, that was a little bit rough overall. But even last night, it wasn't like, if I looked at week 3, I'm pretty sure that Cooper Rush still pretty much came close to these two guys. I don't know. I'd have to double check. But real quick, I do want to break in Chase Banks in the chat asking for some trade ideas. I think this actually fits the nature of this show extremely well. So he's talking about what his starting roster looks like in Dynasty right now. 1 quarterback, non-PPR, 14-man thing. He's just looking for general trade ideas. Now, what he has on the roster is a little bit less important to me. I mean, not entirely, but I'm talking about trade candidates at this point. Saying that, and he follows up saying, not really looking to hit right now. So has some time to wait, just kind of build the undercarriage of this dynasty team, I think. And there's some of these underperformers that he could be going after right now. And this might be a good transition point. But is there anybody that stands out as like, they've really underperformed, but give them time and they'll get there?
Looking at, if there was one I had to pick on here that has been underperforming, I think is Chase Edmonds. We saw him score two touchdowns this last week, but I think overall to start the season, it's been kind of a slow start. So that's the one guy I would kind of key in on that I think could.
Now Edmonds is on his roster currently. I do want to clarify, but you're saying like he'll turn it around. Don't panic.
Yeah, don't panic on him. Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as the guys on our list of underperformers, you're talking, or just in general?
It could be in general. I have a couple that are on this list that we'll definitely transition into.
Well, if I was looking to make some trades here, I would probably try to trade away Brandon Cooks. He's, especially if you're not contending right now.
Just hate Brandon Cooks.
No, I love Brandon Cooks, but he's an aging wide receiver that if you're not contending this year or next year and you're in a rebuild, he's not an asset that's helping, and he's scoring points. So you don't really want that on your roster. I would do the same with like Curtis Samuel while he's performing relatively well right now. Try to trade him. Pretty much anyone on your bench right now. If they're scoring points, you don't really have, except for maybe Hunter Renfrow and McCole Hardman. I might want to hang on to them, but the running backs, like I said, Hunter Henry, they're aging assets that they're not going to help you win in the long run.
And I'll just attack onto that. One of the starters from Chase's roster is Alvin Kamara. And for me, this is a very easy case of an underperformer who we will, have to see how it goes the rest of the season. But it's like, wait for that one blow up game from Alvin Kamara, which is coming. It's going to happen. Wait for that game and then start the trade. His value is definitely deflated right now. But I want to talk about a person. So let's give away the farm a little bit. But I want to talk about Travis Etienne. In terms of trade targets, Travis Etienne is still remaining towards the top of my list. He is RB36 right now in full PPR, where Travis Etienne is supposed to thrive, supposed to be the big pass catcher in this offense. He's supposed to have the connection with Trevor Lawrence, who has, again, shown this year that he is the real deal and that it was the Urban Meyer effect from last season that was bringing him down. Travis Etienne has not gotten raised up with that chip. I think that better days are ahead for Travis Etienne. And James Robinson, still an amazing story. I still love James Robinson. And this year, I just looked foolish because Robinson is fucking crushing it. So Etienne this year, I'm less thrilled about. From a dynasty perspective, I'm still buying in on this guy. So redraft and dynasty, are you still interested in Etienne?
I'm still interested at the right price. I don't know. I mean, I probably wouldn't pay what people are expecting, but if you can get that discount right now, I would definitely snag that up because he is a good player. And I think Jacksonville right now is just trying to make some things happen And I think they happen to be in some good game scripts for them, where James Robinson has been able to get more of the rushing in between the tackles, which is what he does. And as you said, that's not what Etienne's game in. He's more of that pass catcher. So while the wide receivers, yes, have been putting up numbers, I also think James Robinson has had better game scripts for his style of play. So yeah, if you can get Etienne at a discount, I would definitely be going after him.
And for redraft's sake, let's talk about it from that way. So Chase, hopefully that's a good trade candidate for you. I'd also throw out names right now on their depressed weeks, like a Rashad Bateman, who just had a real bummer last week. I mean, I'm not saying anybody's going to be just giving him away for free. Don't get me wrong there. But guys like him and Treylon Burks, who are just kind of, they're in the mud right now, but they had very high promise. Like those guys are the ones that I would try to go for the contenders if they happen to have them on their team. And that's great. For running backs, I'm basically telling you, don't trade for a running back, but just don't trade for any running back right now outside of maybe Dustin. This is like an AJ Dillon moment for Dynasty of his value is also a teeny bit suppressed and next year should be better things. But in general, just don't do that. Justin Fields, we mentioned, that's another option.
Yep. Yeah. Wait to get those running backs until you feel like you're ready to contend. Then go hammer the running backs hard after you kind of build up the rest of your squad.
Hammer them hard. But Travis Etienne for redraft, he did finally have decent touches this last week. He had 16 touches, by far the most of the season. Seems like they're starting to try to get him used a little bit, but also Jacksonville had a crazy lead over the Chargers. So some of those rushing attempts probably stemmed from that. I just really think that they're going to start using him maybe more towards the half of the season. So that's a hard wait to have to do, but I'd do it. I'd do it with Etienne.
Yep.
I do it with him. Who do you want to talk about next, Dustin?
I want to move to our favorite position ever, and that is the tight end position. And talking about the dynasty tight end one, Mr. Kyle Pitts, still number one in my heart, but number 15 overall here. We're kind of seeing the same thing we saw last year. He's getting the targets more or less. He had kind of a down week in week 2 with only 3 targets, but otherwise 8 targets this last week, 7 targets in week 1. Actually had some receptions this week, had 5 receptions, 87 yards, looked better. But again, we're not seeing that touchdown coming, which is really what was holding him back from being that elite tight end last year. And we've also seen Drake London start to rise and get a little bit more acclimated with the NFL over these after the first couple weeks here, where he's been much more involved and being targeted much more by Mariota. I have to believe that he's going to eventually start scoring some touchdowns. I mean, he's getting the targets. That regression, the positive regression has to come where he starts scoring. I mean, he can't be another Julio Jones or Jacoby Myers where they just don't score touchdowns ever. But even Julio had years where he'd get like 8 touchdowns, it was never just like 1 touchdown in a season. So I have to believe better things are coming, but this is surely just a disappointing start to the season for Kyle Pitts.
It's so disappointing in such a rational way. There is a lot of people who said Kyle Pitts cannot sustain decent production with Marcus Mariota. And I'd always erred on the side of, well, we saw him do that with dusty ass, what's his name from the
Matt
Titans.
Ryan.
No. Where Marcus Mariota had sustained production with a tight end for like 3 years. I feel like I block his name out of my
Delaney
head.
Walker.
Thank you. Delaney Walker had 3 of his absolute best years at the twilight of his career with Marcus Mariota. So I always said that's not the case. But what might be the case is Arthur Smith thinking that he's smarter than he is. So
That
play
could
calling for Atlanta. He's unlocked Cordero Patterson. And it's now just this kind of waiting. But it is this waiting game of like, you figured out how to use this guy very creatively. who didn't do shit for the first decade of his career, essentially.
Yeah.
But now Kyle Pitts, who's this generational tight end, all you have to do is match him up against safeties, match him up against big guys. Don't play him like a wide receiver, but also throw him the ball like he's a wide receiver. And it just hasn't happened until this last week. But all of that production, Dustin, came in the first half. He only had one target in this entire second half of that game.
Just criminal.
So they led us by the nose into the second half thinking he's back. Here's the Kyle Pitts we all expected. And then it went away. It evaporated in the second half. Now you're still happy with 87 yards for a tight end, but it is just so goddamn frustrating. But look, tight end 15, that's not happening. Can he get to be a top 3, top 4 guy by the end of the season? I still have my reservations about that. Like I know you can't obviously drop him. Please don't drop him. But like there are going to be matchups where I think I might start another tight end over him still.
Well, here's some of the tight ends above him that I don't think are going to sustain the production that they've had for the rest of the season here, where he will be able to jump up. So you got Tyler Conklin right now at 3 overall.
Yeah.
What? You've got Tyler Higbee. I mean, at 7, I don't know. David Njoku's at 9. You got Will Dissly coming back for Seattle at 11. Logan Thomas is having an okay start to the season at 13. Evan Ingram's at 14. So
hey, you and I both like Logan Thomas a bit.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying,
right.
when you are expecting, you don't expect to see that name above Kyle Pitts. That was my point. And so there is definitely room for him to jump up. And I don't expect all these players above him to continue having this fast start to the season that they've had.
Right.
So times are better, but it's still not what you're expecting when you drafted him where you had to draft him.
Let me say it this way. If we were having this discussion last week, it would be basically, I don't know, man, start Kyle Pitts at your own risk kind of a thing. And now I'm satiated by the fact that they finally just tried last week. So yes, better days are certainly ahead, but still a little bit scary. I want desperately to move off of this position more than anything that's ever happened. I actually want to talk about a running back here that, again, I drafted against myself in our home league, Dustin, and Ezekiel Elliott was sitting there in the 4th round, and I said, sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah, in the 4th round, fuck it. Let me draft Ezekiel Elliott. It's the only team I'm going to have him on. Let's do it. Now, he's sitting at RB39. This is even after this last week, just last night. Thriving. I shouldn't say thriving against the New York Giants. He finally got a touchdown, which cures a lot of woes. But, he finally had a reasonable week. He was RB16 on the week in full PPR. For Ezekiel Elliott, the legacy, that's still not an impressive finish, but based on where he had finished the first 2 weeks, it actually makes you feel something. Makes you feel a little bit of something down in the regions,
That makes you feel something, all right.
I want to throw this to you because you were higher than I on him coming into this season.
Hey,
Do you
he was one of my drinking buddies this year.
Do you still hold out that hope for him the rest of the way?
Am I holding out hope? Yes, I am. Although I am definitely not confident at this point, just with the struggles we've seen on this offense. Now, I know Dak is probably going to be back in a couple weeks here. He just got those stitches removed. So that changes what this offense is going to look like when he's on the field as opposed to Cooper Rush. Hopefully CeeDee Lamb kind of returns to form. Hopefully Michael Gallup is coming back here soon, which gives him a solid number 2 on the opposite side. So I'm hopeful that this offense will improve as the season progresses here, but I'm not nearly as confident in Zeke as I was prior to the season starting.
That's fair. Is any of that to do with Tony Pollard and his, because we're talking about touches. I mean, Rushing attempts, Zeke has 40. Pollard has 28, which is actually pretty high based on what I thought coming into the year was more going to be about the target distribution. And to that point, Pollard has 10 targets to Zeke's 5. That's more of what I expected. I did not expect the rushing attempts to be that close, though. I mean, some of that's garbage time. I understand, but
Right.
a little concerning, right?
It is concerning, absolutely. And I'm just, yeah, like I said, I gotta hold out hope at this point, but I'm not nearly as confident.
Well, I'm going to cling to your hope because I need it in that home league where I'm just struggling. I'm gasping for air. So I will continue to hope for Zeke. But all right, who do you want to hit? We can probably do one more before we move away. Huh?
All right, yeah, let's do one more and let's talk Allen Robinson. He is at a very not nice wide receiver 69. Yeah, again, just so disappointing, as all these players have been. So I shouldn't even have to reiterate that. But I think we were expecting a resurgence this year from Allen Robinson. And we've seen this Ramos offense still put up points. I mean, Cooper Kupp's still doing Cooper Kupp things. While maybe it hasn't been quite as prolific as we had hoped, they're still moving the ball at a very decent clip and putting up points. I'm worried that this is just who Allen Robinson is now. Like, he's just a guy now at this point, and I don't even know if he's at this point even flex worthy. I think there's other guys that have more upside that you could place into your lineup, that if you need that kind of Hail Mary type player to get you points, Allen Robinson is not the guy I would be looking at right now.
Yeah, it's really tough. Robinson, his best week by far. Week 2, 53 yards and a touchdown. And you're like, all right, maybe I've got something going with this Allen Robinson again. But you're right. We have to acknowledge the fact that wide receivers can just hit a cliff and be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always come at 30. It can come a little bit sooner than that. And that might have happened with Allen Robinson. And maybe we bought into the narrative of last year. He gave up on the team. He was just looking for a way out. And you're right. Maybe it is just what it is. What gives me a little bit of hope is the fact that the offense as a whole has just not been quite as good yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that is just like the offense is still in this weird space, but I trust in the coaching at this point. Sean McVay has been there long enough to think that they can right the ship overall, because Matt Stafford hasn't been a world beater just yet. Cooper Kupp, like you said, doing his thing, but I think there's room for Allen Robinson to grow. So I'm not bailing on him, and I'm not as concerned as a lot of people are. I just think there's going to come a clicking point for him, but you have to sit him until that comes, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me very sad because I know we're both big fans of him coming into this season. So, okay, let's quit looking back and start looking forward.
Woo!
In a manner of speaking. So week 4 coming up here. We had our starts of the week for last week. So Jake, you had Jacoby Myers versus Baltimore. This did not play, so doesn't count, unfortunately.
Sad.
And I had Christian Kirk at the Chargers. And he was wide receiver 13, so that worked out well with 19.2 points. So
yours was so good it covered both of us. Like, that's how good that start was.
So yeah, hit one. Now, Jake, who do you have for this week?
Look, it sounds like a gimme to anybody who hasn't been watching or observing this guy for the first 3 weeks of this season, because Austin Ekeler has not been what we wanted Austin Ekeler to be for the first 3 weeks. He had a salvaged week in week 2. A little bit of late game, let's say garbage time effort coming through where he got a touchdown. That was very much appreciated. But in general, Austin Ekeler has been weirdly vacant from this Chargers offense in general. So his stats, if you're just looking at the stats, they don't measure up. Certainly not to prime Austin Ekeler. You know, we don't want him to be an RB2. We want him to be a motherfucking RB1. So my hope here for this week is that Austin Ekeler, not my hope, my expectation for this week is that Austin Ekeler against the Houston Texans, who are giving up by far the most rushing yards per game, over 200. That is the next down the list is like 150. It is a massive, massive gap. We just saw last week the Bears, even with their starter, David Montgomery out, Khalil Herbert comes in, just absolutely runs roughshod over the Texans. I never get to use that phrase. Very happy that I got to use it today. And I'm thinking I'm going to get it again next week with Austin Ekeler. And I'm going to go on a limb and say that both Austin Ekeler and Sony Michel, very usable this week for fantasy. Fire up Sony Michel in your flex spot, who is the number 2 on this Chargers offense. But Austin Ekeler, if there is a get right week for him for fantasy, it's this one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And my start of the week this week is DK Metcalf going against Detroit. We've seen DK get more and more involved each week. It looks like he's starting to get a little something with Geno there. His targets have been increasing every single week. And this game should be a shootout. We've seen this Detroit Lions offense put up points basically at will so far this season. So Seattle's going to have to throw the ball to keep it up. And why not throw it to your best wide receiver on your team? It's that simple.
It really is that simple. I love that. Sometimes fantasy football can be easy, and I think you did it the right way. Before we move along to our beer bet, Karsten Delk in the chat has asked, start, cut, bench for these 3 players: Michael Carter, Jamal Williams, Courtland Sutton. Dustin, I would love to go first for this, actually. This is a no-brainer start for Jamal Williams for me this week. DeAndre Swift dealing with his shoulder issue, going to be out at least this week. We'll see how it progresses. But if you have Jamal Williams, this is your time to shine. Dude was already crushing it in terms of red zone usage, even with Swift in there. So he's going to get so much work. It's going to be crazy. Craig Reynolds, who is the number 3, should be maybe okay. And I would be cutting, unfortunately, Michael Carter out of this group for right now, Dustin. Seems like Breece Hall is starting to catch on. Not saying Michael Carter won't have usable weeks, because he will. But out of this group, I would rather hold tight with Courtland Sutton, because I still am not willing to move off of him. And he's a great addition to this list of who we've talked about today, Dustin.
Yep, I'm 100% agreement with you.
Look at us. Look at fucking us getting right on the same page. All right, Karsten. Well, hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Any week 4 matchups that we want to look at, or let's just move into the good thing? You want to do the good thing?
Yeah, let's just move into the beer bet here. And I believe it's your turn for the beer bet this week.
Yes, I mercifully get to choose. I shouldn't say that, because the week prior when I lost, I had also chosen, and you had still come away victorious. So I want to make things a little bit easier. So the last 2 weeks, just as a reflection and a time staller, we had done whole positions. Been like, look, it's this backfield versus this backfield. It's this wide receiving core versus that wide receiving core. I want to make things real easy. I want to talk quarterback versus quarterback, mano a mano, one position. It's our Thursday night matchup. It's the Dolphins versus the Bengals. It is Tua Tagovailoa versus Joe Burrow. We talked about Tua last week. Said, man, he's going against the Bills. This is how we're going to see if Tua can kind of hang as a fantasy asset. Look, for fantasy, it's not like he was off the charts. In fact, had pretty low volume overall in that game. But he hung in there, and that group hung in there for real NFL football. So I think this one becomes very interesting. But I will throw it to you, Tua versus Joe. Who would you rather have for fantasy this week?
I think I'm going to take Tua. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence right now, and I like what this offense is doing. Although he's got his little he's got his back issue on top of it, but I'm still going to take Tua.
You know, in that respect, both of these teams are kind of dealing with weird shit. Can we just quick vent about what happened with player safety in the NFL this last week? So Tua, of course, everybody's seen, I would assume at this point, the clip, right? He gets sacked. Well, he doesn't get sacked, but he gets knocked down, falls on his back. His head bounces off the turf. He gets up, tries to stand, walks, wobbles, can barely hold himself up. His linemen have to carry him basically to the sideline. Now, talking about another team here, talking about the Bengals with Joe, T. Higgins gets absolutely crushed for the second time in 3 games, gets what looks to be pretty clear, gnarly head injury, and is back out there immediately, just like Tua was back out there immediately. It's so fucked, man. It is so fucked.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. I just... That and the same with Higgins too. I mean, that hit to him was fucking brutal. Just a helmet-to-helmet hit, just brutal. And he looked like he was out cold from what we saw watching Red Zone. And yeah, second half back out there just doing his thing. It's like, come on. NFL needs to do better.
Yeah, and I don't want to use production as the barometer here, but both of these players clearly, after they came back, were much different players. Like T. Higgins, that's the last catch that he saw. I think it's the last target he even saw after that. It was just kind of, he was being out there to be out there. And Tua, same kind of deal. It's like, you don't think, like you don't see that and think that there's something wrong there. That's just, I don't know, man. It's crazy. But in any case, off the soapbox here, but Tua versus Joe, I think will be great. I think the NFL, what they are actually doing right is taking at games on Thursday that are decent games instead of pushing us through another round of Bears versus Jets every Thursday or whatever the comparable iteration is. So that's nice.
It is. It is nice. Thanks, NFL, for doing something right for a change.
You nailed it.
All right. Anything else here, Jake, you want to talk about before we sign off here?
I got nothing. Just check your waivers for the panic drops.
Yep.
Some of the guys that we already talked about will probably be there. Some rightfully so, some less.
That's right. Yeah. Check those waivers. There should be running tomorrow if you're joining us live. Wednesdays, typically the day. Oh, my brain shut off for a second.
Did you get concussed?
I might have.
You
I don't know.
endured a concussion? Well, we might not be able to have you back next week, Dustin.
Oh, don't do that. Don't kick me off the show,
for your
please.
own sake. No, just a 1 week.
Just 1 week. Okay.
Right. To show the NFL how it should work.
Yes.
We might just make an example out of it.
Yes. Well, folks, go out, follow us wherever you need to follow us on Twitter at Jake Trowbridge, my co-host. I'm at FF Dusty Dog. Follow the podcast at Drinking Fantasy. If you are listening to us in the audio version, join us live every single Tuesday. We're here 6:30 Central, streaming live on YouTube. Yes, send in your drunk trades, please. We love them. We need them. We want them in our lives. We love to talk about them. We will give you a shout out.
Maybe even some version of swag. We might even start coming up with swag for drunk trade participants. I feel that's right.
That'd be right. That'd be fun. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And then, follow us wherever you do your podcast. Give us 5 stars, rate, review, all that good stuff. Helps others find us. And actually, the best way is just tell your friends, hey, go check out Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football. They're awesome. It's a lot of fun. They give good advice. They're here for us. Right, Jake?
Yeah, we nailed it.
For that didn't translate well for our audio folks. He lifted up and gave the okay with both hands.
I give double okays. I debated about doing double guns, and I just thought that was too much for the occasion, so I went with double okays. But I think that worked out well.
That worked out well, yeah. All right, folks. Well, that'll do it for this week. Good luck in week 5 to all your squads, and nothing but bad play for all of your opponents this week. And until next week, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.